Let's call the village council meeting to order. Please rise to the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions, deletions, or changes to the proposed agenda for this evening? Being none. Did you print packages for everyone, Kim?
No.
Oh. Somehow
That was just in case you couldn't get logged in.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, thanks to Pete. Thank goodness for Pete. Don't know what we would do without him. Okay, so regular agenda minutes for our October 7th meeting.
Or do we want to?
17th, excuse me, October 17th.
Do we want to do a roll call?
That's a great idea. Yeah, let's do a roll call.
President Schneider,
Present.
President Pro Tem Dyke, Councilmember Feldman,
Present.
Councilmember Glasser, Councilmember Kuligowski,
Present.
Councilmember Powell, Councilmember Steffler. Present.
Okay, since I'll actually pay attention to the agenda, next is communications. We do have correspondence from Great Lakes Water Authority, letter dated October 1st. It's kind of old, but this is an update indicating June 1 through August 31, which is a critical period for GLWA to measure our water pumpage and reservoir level data. So as of June 2, 2023, peak hour was 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and we apparently did well. And the only member partner that had a number that exceeded the contractual maximum flow rate for the calendar year 2023 was Lincoln Park. Otherwise, we're good. Agreed, Kim?
Yes.
In good shape? Okay. There's that. Okay. So the regular meeting minutes for the October 17 meeting are interesting because, let's see, under corrections to be made to the minutes with A through J, and under J, and I don't know if it was caught previous to me bringing it up now, it said insert the word building before theater, which would be kind of backwards because then it would say building theater when in fact it was theater building. They had recommended. We change it to, so, because I wanted to distinguish between the theater building and the medical building. So there was that. And the master plan update. Yes. I'll begin at the top of page 4 of our packet. Transportation, sidewalks, and roadways, they want to show, whoever they is, the 10-year road maintenance. So and whatever you think, Manager Trent, road maintenance program or capital improvement plan, how do you think it should be worded? It says they want to show the 10-year road maintenance, well, like half a sentence. Should be just saying road maintenance program or capital improvement plan or however you designated it. Any thoughts? Because we do have a 10-year road maintenance plan. Just adding the word plan sufficient?
Yes, that would be.
Okay, so if we can do that, please. Thank you. Under manager comment, under comment time manager, the paragraph, let's see. Yes, the second paragraph under manager's comment time. and the communications between our manager and Mr. Gasbecker Insurance, whatever his proper name is. Didn't we indicate that that issue was also going to be referred on to our village attorney for his input?
Yes. And
Have we received any response?
we sent letters today from Mr. Gildner and myself, along with pertinent zoning ordinance documentation, indicating that he's in violation of the ordinance and he's been asked to do two things to resolve the matter.
So I think the minutes should reflect that the issue should be resolved early next week. However, this issue has also been referred to our village attorney, something along those lines. And then for future addressing of that issue, needs to be followed up on. And if there's no compliance, which would not be surprising, then village administration should consider a citation be issued and go to court. Hopefully resolved amicably. Past history doesn't necessarily inspire that thought. Oh, lastly, let's see here. After coming out of closed session, there's a motion by our President Pro Tem, passed unanimously by the council members present, to authorize Manager Trent to, and it says commit. I believe we should say something along the lines of whatever you think you said, Tim. Continue settlement negotiations. Do you recall the language that you used? I don't believe it was commit.
No, that was to communicate. Wasn't it to communicate a settlement negotiation with the insurance carrier?
Continue settlement negotiations. Either one, but the word should not be commit. You thinking continue settlement negotiations? The insurance carrier?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right. That's all I had. As far as minutes, anybody else in our minutes for the October 17 meeting?
Not a question on the minutes per se, but I did go back to try to watch the recording, and I couldn't find it on our YouTube channel.
It's there.
Okay.
You have to go under the live tab.
Okay.
I don't understand why, because we're not live, but maybe because we streamed it live.
Yeah, I got all the way to the October 2nd meeting, but the 17th wasn't popping up. But there was a little icon that said hidden videos not shown. So
I don't know if that was.
I
I was trying to do my homework.
I will look into that.
Yeah,
The irony
I've gotten in
a
that way.
statement like that, hidden videos not shown.
I know.
Really?
Ooh, that's not great.
Huh. I'll look into it.
All right, thank
Were we able
you.
to figure
And
out-
I might have been looking in the wrong spot, but it seemed
Were you able to figure out what we were
Huh.
hiding?
Right.
Hiding something. Anyway, okay.
I'm on the channel now. I can pull it up. I see it.
okay.
Oh, it is
October
there?
17th.
Yeah.
Maybe it was on my phone. I don't know.
Okay.
You do have to go to the live tab.
Okay, I'll check that.
Locked, Mindy.
Council members hidden. If you weren't here, too bad.
Okay, moving on, general fund. Major streets, local streets.
So I do have a question real quick.
Sure.
I noticed something that kind of popped out at me about snow removal already being billed to both major and local streets. Is that like a contract that we have in place with?
Yes,
Yeah.
with
Okay.
my deal, we got our first shipment of salt. that
Okay, all right. Because I know we got a little dusting on Tuesday, but it didn't warrant chloride and everything else. So, okay, all right, that makes sense. So thank you for that clarification.
Major streets, local streets, Parks and Recreation Fund, Downtown Development Authority Fund, Sewer Fund, Water Fund, Equipment Fund. Payroll Register Report. And entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Feldman, to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
I
Objections? Unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. Next on our agenda is public comment for any item on our regular agenda for this evening. Is there any public comment? Being none. Moving on to our regular agenda, item number 1, fiscal year 2023 audit presentation. Gentlemen?
Good evening. For those that I haven't met before, I think there's maybe some new faces on the council. So for those that have never met me before, my name is Wes Messing. I'm a CPA with King & King CPAs. We've been contracted by the village to conduct the annual audit for the village as required by the state of Michigan. So we were here in late August to conduct the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. Overall, I want to thank Kim, David, all the staff at the village for their time and cooperation while we're here to do our examination. They're all very helpful, very courteous and polite, and feel like they do a good job for the village. So we thank them for that. We bring a lot of people, we ask a lot of questions. So I know it's a disruption to their days for the couple days that we're here, so we thank them for their time. I left on your desks a couple page, yeah, I see Tim just grabbed it. Lots of numbers on there. Rather than going through the 50+ page audit report that's really technical, we found this to be a useful tool for board presentations to kind of give some historical financial data, kind of help us identify any trends or issues if there are any that are alarming before we get to a problem of problems. The very first number that you'll see on that report is the fund balance for the general fund. As of June 30th, 2023, it was about 1.6 million. You can see over the last 5 years that that's been steadily increasing since 2019. That was the year that we did the big renovation for the hall and the police department and the building department. So since then, we've had a nice steady increase, adding to our fund balance every year. Our property tax revenues, those are increasing year over year. A good sign of the tax base of the village continuing to strengthen. And we're still seeing recovery from 07, 08 and the real estate crash. And as we've seen since COVID with a lot of real estate turnover, that's going to help the village as well to uncap the taxable values and help jump that value up to the SEV. And help the township, or help the village, to have a higher actual revenue coming in for those houses. So that's a good thing. Good sign for the future of the village for their property tax collections. The next line, intergovernmental revenues, that's your state revenue sharing. That's basically the 6% sales tax that's collected in the state of Michigan, redistributed out to all the local units of government. Your share for this past year was about $360,000. You can see that's been increasing. Should continue to see that increase as well, especially in a time of inflation. If the cost of goods go up, that 6% should go up. Although it's not really a windfall for municipalities because your costs are going up too. So it's just to help offset those costs. Charges for services in the general fund, that's for trash and police service that we provide. And then various other revenues as well. So overall, our total revenue in the village for the year was just over 2.1 million. As we see our revenues increasing, you can also see our expenses generally have been increasing as well. I don't see anything in there that's really kind of alarming. Increases seem reasonable for what I see in the area and other audits that we do. Just kind of depends on the year for some of those things as well, like public works, just kind of depends on if we've got a year of high issues or not, that kind of thing. So the debt service that's in the general fund is related to drains, mainly for the Stroop drain and some for Bell River drain. Any questions on the general fund? Overall, I'll add, this year alone, we added $320,000 to the general fund balance, the last line there. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt. That's the big one, so we'll kind of try to move a little quicker through the rest of them. Major streets, our fund balance is about 485, holding pretty consistent or even increasing over the last 5 years. Sufficient fund balance for that fund. We're receiving the Act 51 revenue from the state of Michigan. That's increasing over the last 5 years as well, similar to the revenue sharing. So that's a good sign for the future of that fund. And then kind of a similar story for the line below, or the section below, for local streets. We have a $200,000 fund balance there. Our intergovernmental revenues from the state are also trending upwards. We have enough in those funds that we're covering more than our operating costs, which is good. It allows us to set money aside for street paving projects, which are not cheap. So yes, major has almost 500,000 and local a couple 100,000. That can be used very, very quickly when you start resurfacing some streets. So any questions on those? Okay, next page, the DDA fund has a fund balance of about 300,000. Certainly sufficient for the use of that fund and what that department or authority uses to operate as far as keeping up with our downtown area. Next one, the wastewater treatment improvement fund, which is kind of winding down this past year. I think as of this point, it's now closed. So that was there to help kind of support the sewer operations, but that's since now wound down. And then our water tower fund to help the water department and the water tower collects about $130,000 every year to support that operation, holding about $100,000. Basically what we collect in that fund gets shifted over to water to help cover the costs for that fund. And then last on that page is our inspection fund, which is pretty dormant for the last 5 years as we've shipped that activity out. Next page, our park and recreation fund holding about 57,000. That's the highest it's been the last 5 years. So that's good to see for the park department. Park equipment, not cheap. We put some of that in last year, cost about 30,000, about 40,000 for some new park equipment last year. And in that year, we get some help from the township and to help support those items when they go in. There's sufficient money there to help cover the operations. And again, we're collecting a little bit more, or roughly what we need to cover operations. So no issues or concerns there. Our sewer fund, boy, like every number on the sewer fund is the highest it's been for the last 5 years. Cash, working capital, our fund balance or net position, our revenues, and our expenses. But everything's good as far as cash, working capital, net position. Those being the highest they've been, that's great. That's our position in that fund. So that's really good to see that we're at the highest that we've been there, and our regular adjustments to our utility rates are sufficient to cover our increases in costs. I know the village is very active with that, of adjusting those every year. I know being in Imlay City, I think they were dormant for a couple of years on adjusting some rates. And then just this year, they had to make a little bit of an increase. And now they're all in the newspapers because there's an increase. So when you have just minimal increases every year to hopefully cover those costs, it's part of the operation. It's good policy. So commend the board on that. Similar for water, we're kind of recovering our funds and our balances in the water fund. If you go back to 2021, there was a big dip in our cash and our working capital in that year because we did a water main project that year. It cost about $450,000. So, and we did not finance that project. I don't think we paid cash for it. So that drained a lot of the cash in that fund, and we're still recovering from that. But we're recovering at a pretty good pace. This year, we're now back up to 185 in cash. and about 120 in working capital. So that's good. We're recovering there. Again, our water revenues are the highest that they've been the last 5 years as we're adjusting those rates. Our expenses also were higher, but our increases are enough to cover those higher costs. So again, nothing really alarming there. And our last one, the equipment fund. The equipment fund is always a fun one for me to work on because we have lots of equipment activity. We took on 3 new loans this year for about a total of $193,000. We did pay off 2 loans, which we didn't really pay them off early. They matured and we paid them off. So kind of swapped a couple out there. Overall, we're paying about $70,000 a year in financing payments, principal and interest. Our cash position there is about $80,000, which is the lowest that it's been in the last 5 years. But I don't feel it's alarmingly low. I don't think we need to accumulate a ton of cash in there. From a financial perspective, it would be nice to see the village kind of turn a corner and be able to pay cash for equipment rather than finance equipment. But you got to do what you got to do. And equipment ages, it gets more expensive to replace it. Thankfully, your interest rates on those were pretty good, 2, 3, 4% on those interest rates for what you finance. I know Michigan Class is standing behind me. They're getting 5-ish% on investments. So to invest money at 5% to pay interest at 3 or 4%, the village is winning doing that. So if it's the other way around, then you start looking, hey, we're only earning 1% on our money, but we're paying 4% at the bank on our loans. Maybe we pay down some of these loans. But anyway, there's a balance there. And I don't feel there's any concern with where the village is at. But we're receiving about $180,000 this past year from the other funds to kind of support the equipment activity and for the use of the equipment, which was enough to cover the operating costs for the year. So, any questions on those financials? Again, overall, as we walk through all of that, I don't see anything that stands out as a concern financially for the village. I think the village is in a pretty healthy financial position. In kind of wrapping up our audit, there was well, before I move on, does anybody have any questions on that? I'm going to kind of jump to another topic. In wrapping up the audit, I had kind of meeting with both Kim and David, just answering any questions that they have. One of the topics that came up was the water and sewer budget and just kind of the difficulty that it presents for the staff and David to manage that budget when we're factoring in depreciation. Depreciation is a big item on those funds. It represents the kind of the usage of the infrastructure each year. It's a couple $100,000 in the water and sewer funds, but it's not a cash item. I'm okay if David and the council wants to kind of omit that item from their budget and have it more of a cash flow type budget than kind of an actual income and expense budget. That's not an issue for me. That was one thing he wanted me to comment on tonight. I don't have a problem with that. It won't affect anything with your audit or if we want to make that change, if that would make things easier for the staff to manage the budget that way.
I have a question on that. Do you know
Yes.
why that's typically presented in that way?
Say that again. Why or where?
Why?
Why?
That's presented in that way, different from other funds.
Well, those funds have a kind of a special presentation in the financial statements because of just the nature of that activity. They're a utility fund, so they're supposed to be able to self-sustain off of the operations of that department. And there's obviously a huge upfront investment in infrastructure for those funds, which it's not really fair to recognize it as a cost in the year that it's put in service, because that's going to benefit the village for 30, 40 years as long as that infrastructure is in place. So that's the way somebody who's probably smarter than me decided that that's how that's going to be presented. If we have $1 million investment, we're going to recognize that sliver each year as a cost through depreciation of that infrastructure, because the infrastructure is losing value. as the years go on, it's less reliable and we have to replace it at some point. So it's supposed to try to recognize the cost, the true cost of that system for the year, even though you're not really making those payments year over year. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Is there any reason why we should not eliminate depreciation as far as administering?
I don't have
It sounds like
any
it'd be more efficient if we don't include that. So is there a reason why we
So-
shouldn't exclude it?
Yeah, one of the reasons that I broached this with Wes was it provides us more flexibility for capital outlay expenditures, which we kind of touched on at our last meeting with council's approval of those wastewater treatment plant projects that without, this modification that we're trusting you'll adopt for tonight with some first quarter amendments that Kim is bringing to the table, that enables us to plan better in the future for those kinds of expenditures. And as Wes has alluded to, the bottom line is that the depreciation ends up affecting the fund balance for those respective funds. But from a budgetary standpoint, as far as cash flow, it's a non-issue. And so, many communities have adopted that type of approach. I've done that in the other communities I've had the pleasure to serve in because of the issue of not showing that we're in the red in those funds and having the flexibility to invest in capital projects. So.
Seems to make sense. Anybody on council have any negative views as far as proceeding that fashion?
Negative views, but before we make a total accounting change, I'd like it to be presented to us and how it's done and what it would look like going forward. Not just to say, hey, we're gonna make this change, because I don't understand what that change is.
And is it a matter of when the depreciation hits the books? Is it a monthly charge or is it the depreciation up front and then you're climbing uphill for the budget year?
The depreciation is factored in going forward with this modification would be factored in at year end auditing, fiscal year end assessment, if you
The
will.
only time it would show up.
So it would show up in the auditor's report, but going forward, the financials that you folks would see periodically would have that line eliminated, and it would end up showing that those funds are even healthier, if you will, as far as being in the black. If I said that correctly, Wes.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say that you said incorrectly. At this point, it's probably there as a budgeted item if it is part of your budget, but then when you look at the actual, it would just be zero. Depreciation is an adjustment that we generally make just through the course of our audit anyway. It's not something that is put into your books monthly. We help the village calculate that and determine that when we come to do the audit. So it really doesn't ever show up in your books for actual until we put it there for you. Yeah.
Makes sense then to go that route.
So what was commented upon by Tim, is there a manner in which you could present additional information, data, et cetera, that would satisfy his commentary on that issue?
I'm not sure you're really going to notice much of a change. It'll be, like I said, I don't have your budget in front of me, but I anticipate there's a line item on there for depreciation.
Yeah,
For a
and you'll
couple
see that
$100,000.
in the budget amendment.
That's fine, but we're changing our accounting process, even if we're removing a line. And I don't understand from this discussion here of what that change, how that change affects us.
Well, and like Wes and David said, that line item is only used on June 30th when I get the adjusting journal entries from our auditors. It's not used throughout the entire fiscal year until Wes is done with the audit.
What I'm anticipating David's difficulty is, and if I say something wrong, you can correct me. If we're trying to have a balanced budget that comes down to, let's say, net zero. If we have $1 million of revenue and $1 million of expenses, so we net to zero, that kind of makes everybody happy and we feel we have a balanced budget. But if part of that $1 million of expenses is $300,000 of depreciation, that's never actually a cash outlay item, that's restricting the money that's available to do other things. Where if we had budgeted to do those other things, it would show a loss. So it's just kind of changing to say we're going to try to look at just the cash in, cash out versus kind of the accounting adjusting for depreciation as well. I think that's probably what the goal is. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And my last comment, because of what Wes said, jogged my memory, is that on a year in and year out basis, we are investing in new equipment and infrastructure. So in one sense, we're depreciating our assets on June 30th, but throughout the course of the year, we're adding new assets that will be depreciated. So that gives us the cash wherewithal to invest in infrastructure. And we let the auditors do their magic on June 30th as far as depreciating those new assets and older assets. So we're basically maintaining the status quo, if you will, as far as what our capital assets are, because we're giving ourselves the flexibility from a cash standpoint to keep investing in our capital improvement plan projects. That's the David Trent philosophy. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, but that's how I look at it.
And I'm not up here pushing that you have to make this decision tonight. It's just a discussion topic that I wanted to make sure to comment on while I was here. So I'll leave that to council to decide what you'd like to do at that point. So it will not affect anything with your audit or what we do or the reporting to the state of Michigan. It will not make any changes there. It's purely internal.
That's something you want to see as a agenda item, Tim?
Yeah, and even if it's a one-page cheat sheet, this is what depreciation is. This is how it's affected in the budget. This is how we're going forward, calculating our, I mean, I get it, but I don't fully get it. And I don't want to make a decision without having a true understanding of it.
Understand?
Fair.
Not to belabor the point, I know from a business perspective, when we depreciate capital, we take that right off, over time. In a municipality setting, what is the point even depreciating capital?
Well, it's
if we're
essentially
not-
recognizing the same thing. It doesn't affect a tax return, which is kind of the reason that it's done on a business standpoint, because it affects how much income tax you pay.
Right.
Obviously, the village doesn't pay income tax. The reason for it in a village or a municipal setting is just to try when you're looking at a financial perspective, to recognize the true cost of operating that system on an annual basis.
So from the initial investment, what it is
Yes.
over time.
How much of that,
Okay.
yes, how much of that initial investment got used up this year? How much did our infrastructure deteriorate this year for the operation of the system?
So it's more of just a matter of optics in a
Mhm.
municipality setting than would be in a business setting. Okay,
Yes.
understood.
Well, and also though, I mean, in an ideal world, if that to your $300,000 point is, if it cost us a depreciation of $300,000 to operate the sewer system, we should take that $300,000 because we're not using it, right? We're taking it out of the fund and put it in the bank, because that's how much it's going to cost us to replace what that deterioration cost. And depending on whether it's a vehicle, big infrastructure, they all have a different depreciation rate over time. Cars, a couple of years, tractors, 5 to 7, 15, whatever, big stuff, 20, 30, 40. Roads, 30 or 50 years, right? Depending on what you use. What that I think is supposed to be saying is you should be putting this money away because that's how much it's going to cost you to replace that item.
That's accurate. So you either get down to the point when one of those items needs to be replaced. Do we have the cash to replace it, or do we have to finance it, or some of both?
There can't be any harm in not deciding this evening and putting it on our agenda next meeting or whenever it'll fit on, so we can take a full, complete look at it. It's always advisable. So are we all on board on that? Okay. Anybody else have any questions or commentary to Wes as far as this presentation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Nice presentation. Thank you. Good seeing you again.
Thank you.
And you're not interested in discussing your contract, correct?
Or
Or did you actually want to get
I'll
paid?
stay. Well, Kim already gave me a check for last year, so we're good there.
Good to go.
But I'm happy to stay here and I can answer any questions about the next item on the agenda.
So the presentation's been made and, I mean, it looks very reasonable to me, but that's my take. There's at least one other council member who may be more conservative than I am financially, but look reasonable to me. So discussion from council as far as the proposal for, it's a 5-year
Well,
contract,
yes.
correct?
Yeah, we need to enter, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have to enter the
Yeah.
record of the
Audit
audit
into-
into the record.
Yes.
So I'll make the motion that we enter the audited financial report year ending June 30th, 2023 into the record as presented.
Support.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilman Kukulkowski, to enter into the record the fiscal year 2023 audit. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously approved by all council members in attendance.
Just to reiterate, well done.
Yes. And forgive me, council, I had a day with nothing but legal emergency that drove me absolutely nuts, and a little village emergency too, which we'll get into when we go into closed session. So just a little off on following exactly what we're supposed to be doing here. So regular agenda item number 2, the auditing services contract. We've had a presentation. Either anybody in village administration want to address
It's up
the
to Kim.
contract?
Kim, right?
Yeah, as you can see, I mean, they've been our auditors for ever, almost. And since 2014, they've had minimal increases in their contract. I mean, it averages out to less than 3% a year. And with everything, you know, the market has increased. And because of our existing relationship, we're still below market, but we're trying to get, they still have to be able to function. So we are well below market. What if we were new clients, we would be charged. They are always very responsive. Wes takes my barrage of questions throughout the year and he answers them very quickly. And they do a great job at the audit. Like they said, there's a stream of people in my office for a couple of days, but they do a phenomenal job. So.
Any opposing views as to the contract as presented and as apparently supported by our treasurer?
I'll make the motion that we approve the 5-year contract with King & King CPAs for their auditing services.
Support.
Motion by Councilmember Steffler, supported by Councilmember Kukulkowski. Probably mispronouncing it.
No.
I think it was.
Powell.
Oh, I'm okay. I knew it was over that side of the
I do
table.
support, but yes.
Supported by Councilmember Powell, Stevie there. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved by all council members in attendance. So, thanks, Wes.
Thank you, council. Look forward to working with you guys.
Absolutely. Nice
Thank you,
doing,
Wes.
nice doing business with you. Regular agenda item number 3, additional depository request for Michigan class. So you want to make an initial presentation on that, Kim?
Yes, included in your packet is a summary of what Michigan class is. Basically, I want to add another investment opportunity in my toolbox. They have great rates of return. They have several municipalities. They comply with Public Act 20. And Mr. Jeff Anderson is here from Michigan Class in case you had any questions.
How did you come to learn about Michigan Class?
Oh, I've known about Michigan Class since I started here. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to get representation when I first got here. So yeah, this opportunity came up, and
I had an opportunity to take a brief look, and the numbers certainly look good as far as how to allocate various investments that we have. So you would make a decision unilaterally on your own as to investment, or would you be bringing it back to council, or how would that work?
per our investment policy, I have the authority. However, I have to have a second signature on that. Either David or my deputy would have that second authorization.
So the mechanics are, it's village administration
Correct.
decision as to the investments, which is, I guess, what we've been doing in the past, but. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Mr. Anderson, evening.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Any questions? I mean, I'm happy to give a 5-minute overview or a 65-minute overview.
5 sounds good.
I know you. I know you had closed session tonight, so I think we'll stay away from the 65 minutes. So I am here tonight representing the Michigan Class Local Government Investment Pool, and I appreciate Kim and David having me and providing you the information ahead of time. So we are a local government investment pool. We work with over 750 local units in the state of Michigan. Really a nice combination of city, village, township, school district, authority, whether it be water, sewer, fire authority, any authority, conservation districts in the state of Michigan. And really, we were created in 1991 by a group of treasurers that really wanted to accomplish 3 things. Number one, they wanted to work together to invest their money with really those 3 goals. One being safety. The pool is AAA rated by Standard & Poor's. It's the highest rating you can get as a local government investment pool. So safety is paramount in everything we do. Number 2 is liquidity, and that's a big deal and different from, I would say, a historically traditional bank CD where you're going to put money in for a certain period of time. At the end of that time period, you're going to get the money back plus interest. Michigan Class has daily liquidity, which means if you had $100,000 in the pool today and you needed it to buy some equipment in your budget tomorrow, management can simply jump on the web portal, transfer the money that is linked to your bank account, and it's there tomorrow morning. So it's daily liquidity. The number 3 is yield. Working together with other local units in the state, you're able to achieve the same yield as Oakland County government and the smallest township up in the UP. Everybody gets paid the same. Going back to the safety part of it, what happens is when you put $1 into the pool, you own your proportionate share of 200 to 300 different investments, all Public Act 20 compliant, which Kim referenced, which I like to call our investment Bible, if you will, in the state of Michigan. It's 10 things the state says we can invest in, all extremely, extremely safe, the safest of the safe being U.S. treasuries and agencies and some top-tier commercial paper. Really, the last thing is convenience. That unlike bank CDs, and when they mature, maybe Kim's out of town or on vacation or busy with the audit, and maybe that money sits there earning nothing until she can get to it. Whereas Michigan Class, your money is earning for you each and every day. We pay interest daily, which allows you to achieve a compounding effect. So tomorrow you would earn interest on the interest you earned today. And then the last thing is yield. Today the rate is 5.54%. Obviously because of what the Fed has done in the last 18 months, we've seen rates rise significantly. And our folks, our economists on staff think that we will expect that 5 to 5.5% range for the next 9 to 12 months. Obviously, things can change with things like, wars and things of that nature. So that's my caveat. But there is no cost to join the pool to you. There's no minimum. There's no monthly transaction fees. It is really like I love what Kim said. It's a tool in the village's toolbox to use to earn some extra income when it makes sense for you.
For that
Question.
daily liquidity, is there a fee associated with that?
There is not.
There is not?
There's not.
So how do you guys make your money?
Great.
If there's no monthly fee, there's not,
Great
because I
question,
want to
Ed.
put my money in this.
So,
now.
right, well, and that's the next question. I got to be honest with you. I probably get that question for sure weekly,
Yeah.
if not daily. Like,
Yeah.
do you have an account for nonprofits or even personal people? So Michigan Class, like I mentioned at the start, was created in 91 by a group of treasurers, and they formed a board. And today, the pool is governed and owned by our participants. So we have a 13-member elected board, and they've signed an agreement with a company called Public Trust Advisors. They do local government pools in 12 different states. They manage about $75 billion. So our board has signed an agreement with Public Trust for 13 basis points, or 0.13. So I'll give you an example because the numbers help it make sense. Today, we posted on our website that the yield is 5.54. Anybody with $1 in Michigan Class tonight will be paid that 5.54% divided by 365 days, okay? The basket of $4 billion earned 5.67. So the 0.13 comes off the top every day. And the yield we post is what you're actually going to get paid. So that's helpful when our treasurers go to make a decision on, hey, we just got our state revenue sharing. We don't think we need it for 3 months. What are we going to do with it? We can go to the website and see what the actual yield that you're going to get paid is today. I'll add, because when I was actually on the Michigan Class board, I was a finance director in Delta Township for almost 20 years. And the first question I asked at the first meeting was, 0.13, is that efficient? Is it a little egregious? And really the one good comparison we came up with is there's another pool in the state of Michigan. It's called the MyLaugh, mostly used by local school districts. That fee is 0.42%. So 3.5 times what Michigan Class is. So at the end of the result, we're able to provide a higher yield to our participants.
So I'm going to declare the sovereign state of Drakeshire so I can start
There
pumping money in.
you go.
Worth a shot. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds great.
And tonight, you're not committing to anything. You're simply giving management the option to open the account and to use it as the village sees fit.
So Kim, would there be, so if we approve the resolution this evening, would there be a next step that would come before council?
Typically, no. But if council would feel more comfortable, I can provide the investment policy at the next meeting that was adopted in 2013, I believe. And we can go over it and see if you still agree with that policy or if you would like to change it.
Following up on a previous issue that was before us this evening, sounds like that would be a good idea to do that. Number one. Number two, if you decide to implement under this and you make an investment, you actually take that step and move it forward, can you provide council with that information so we know when you're
Yes,
doing it?
yes, it could be part of my financial position, my monthly financial position report.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
That sounds reasonable. Yeah. Just so, yeah, so we have some idea. I mean-
Absolutely.
I mean, from what's presented this evening, it sounds as if there's going to be an even greater return than we've been receiving in our prior investments,
Correct.
which is a very attractive thing. You can come back every meeting if you want, Jeff. Let us know how we're doing, especially if the rate goes up to 6.30. But yeah, but it certainly would be, since it's something, especially since it's something new,
Mhm.
it would be very helpful for council to know
Sure.
that. And so maybe we could have a 20-year road maintenance plan instead of just 10-year or whatever it might be. Okay.
Sure.
Any other commentary from council? So we have a resolution before us. Do we have a motion?
I guess I just have one question for Ken. If we pass this, what's your initial thought on the amount that would be invested initially? Has that been considered yet?
I want to say minimum $250,000.
Sounds reasonable. And then we see how it goes. And as long as we don't get into World War III, it should turn out well. Never
Right.
know.
Fix some roads.
Pardon?
I said we might have to fix some roads.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 23-11-01, approving the addition of Michigan Cooperative Liquid Asset Security System as an approved investment option.
I support.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Feldman to approve resolution. Yeah. Okay. 23-11-01. It's a resolution to approve the addition of Michigan Cooperative Liquid Asset Securities System as an approved investment option. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Powell?
Aye.
Steffler?
Aye.
Dyke?
Aye.
Feldman?
Aye.
Kuligowski?
Aye.
Schneider?
Aye. Resolution 23-11-01 is unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. And Mr. Schneider, if I could just make one comment going back to the auditor. I'll back up one step. I teach numerous budget classes. Matter of fact, I'm teaching one for the government finance officers next week. It is common practice to not budget for depreciation. So that would be in compliance with probably 95% of local units. And we actually talk about that in our class. Whereas general fund, you wouldn't be booking the depreciation anyway. So try to keep it uniform across funds. So take that for what it's worth. But I thought I'd mention that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Would
the
you like him
coming.
to come back to the
Yeah, he could teach
next
the class.
meeting? and-
He just offered.
Sign up for the class.
Excellent. Good. Thank you very much
Thank
for the
you.
presentation and attending this evening. So moving on to regular agenda item number 4, fiscal year 2024 first quarter budget amendments. Kim?
Yes, as you can see in our memo, several adjustments. The general fund, unfortunately, there were more property taxes paid late. So we got interest and penalties. So that was more than anticipated. Our liquor fees collected were more than anticipated. And Wes referenced the wastewater treatment plant improvement project. So that was the SSO rate that we collected from our residents, which we have fulfilled that bond. So per our ordinance, we're allowed to take the excess and deposit it into the general fund. So there's a transfer from that fund to general fund. There was a reimbursement for to the school for safety equipment that was paid through the law millage. The Bell River drain, it's a very small assessment that was excluded from the budget process, so that's included in there. And education and training went up in planning and zoning because 2 members took advantage of that planning class. Major streets, we received more reimbursement for the state trunk line maintenance from MDOT than anticipated. Local streets, we received HIP CRSAA funding. It was for funding to address COVID-19 impacts related to highway infrastructure programs. So that helped a lot. There was an increase in the engineering fees because of the Category B grant and removing some hazardous trees. Sewer fund, and to Mr. Dyke's comment, we can take out that adjustment on the depreciation expense until we have that discussion next meeting. But there was an increase in the replace and repair because of the EQ valve replacement that was approved by council last month. And for the sludge pump replacement and sludge holding tank relining, that was also approved last month. The water fund, again, we can take out that depreciation line adjustment. And then there was a slight increase in the HydroCorp cross-connection program contract. And the equipment fund, the charger cost more than anticipated. However, we got the loan to offset that. And then the cost for the plow and the mower were slightly higher than we thought, but it was negligible, $995. So.
Just curious, the liquor fees, what funds does the village receive from liquor establishments in the community?
Yep, it's the liquor license. We get it from the state of Michigan.
Just, okay.
Mhm.
And on what basis does the state of?
To be honest, I really don't know.
Okay. I was just curious, yeah.
But we get it twice a year. Yeah,
Is it based on the number of issued licenses?
that's what I'm thinking. That's why it increased, because I believe, was it Senior Victor's?
Yeah.
License? Yes. So,
According to Liquor Control Commission, Almont's only allowed 2, and we had 3. And let's see, Novak got it because the limitation, and it's by population in the community, but because he was pulling a license out of escrow, that you get around the community limitation. So that added to it. So we got Roots, we got Mikey's.
you do not get an explanation. It just,
It's at least 4.
Shows up.
That's at
we get,
least
yep, it
we
just shows up.
At
we
least
get
have five
notification.
licenses. Mikey's is just about to change hands. I'm involved in that, so that we got at least 5. Wow, amazing. Okay, I'm just curious how that happened. Obviously, you haven't been participating in the tequila since you don't know, but
Oh.
but okay, I was just curious. Sorry. Okay. All right, so questions from council as to the first quarter budget amendments for the fiscal year 2024.
Just one real quick question. So I know that we had pre-approved the cost of plows and charger, et cetera. Do we have a leeway, like percentage leeway, 5%, 10% within approved, or does it have to be not to exceed and less?
Usually we have a not to exceed. I cannot remember what the motion was on the mower and the plow, to be honest. The plow,
I
didn't we
remember,
have a $600 leeway because of the installation?
Yes, there was going to be the installation cost that we had, but I also remember having a discussion of because of when we approved it, and it was going to take them 8 to 10 weeks to get the plow.
Right.
Was there going to be a difference in price? And the feeling at the time was no, they would charge us what we approved. And it seems as though they didn't charge us what we approved. They waited 8 to 10 weeks, and inflation took the cost up.
I can follow up on that.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all, honestly.
Right.
More discussion regarding the budget amendments.
I just had a question about the remaining balance in the SSO rate fund being
Yes.
transferred to general fund. Is there a reason why we would put it in general fund as opposed to the sewer fund?
That is what is written in our ordinance,
Okay,
that it goes to the general fund.
It said May, I think May, so I wasn't sure if that was like a choice or if the ordinance said it goes to this.
No, I believe it says the general fund.
Okay.
However, if council would prefer, the general fund can make a contribution to the sewer
Back to
fund
the sewer fund.
for that.
Yeah, I just wondered about it because it was collected for the purpose of supporting
Right,
improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. So I don't know if council has feelings one way or the other.
It was nearly $20,000 and not
Yeah.
change.
Right.
Yeah. That's the thing we hear the most about, right? Water and sewer rates.
Correct.
It should help offset the cost of the recent capital we just purchased. So,
One of them anyway.
yeah. at least-
One of them. Mhm.
Yeah, if that's what council prefers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my preference. I don't know if others feel the same way.
It's okay with me too.
We should probably put that in a motion, just to solidify it.
Sure. I'll try my best. I'll make the motion that we transfer $19,065 from general fund to sewer fund to represent monies collected in the SSO fund.
Support?
Excuse me, motion by Councilmember Steffler, supported by Ed. Right? Can't mispronounce your name that way. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimously approved. Okay. Any further question, commentary regarding the proposed budget amendments? If not, entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we enter the first quarter budget amendments, or approve the first quarter budget amendments.
I'll support it.
Do you want the removal of the depreciation adjustment until next quarter?
With that correction.
With that correction,
Mhm.
okay.
Still support it.
Hey, motion made by Councilmember Steffler, supported by Councilmember Feldman, to approve the fiscal year 2024 first quarter budget amendments. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Objections? Unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. Regular agenda on item number 5, ordinance number 193.8, that being the food truck use. First reading. So, wow, what's council's reaction to the first reading? Tim, you're our expert on food truck, right?
Zoning?
I don't know about that. I think there was a discussion here, there was concern about where the trucks could be, and there wasn't enough space, and it wasn't permitting in the commercial zone, which was going to be the main place they were going to be. And also, there was discussion at council in regards to the noise about decibel, and we discussed that at the last council meeting. Took that back to planning commission. Caitlin did a update, putting those things back into the ordinance and doing some rewording, and that's where we're at now.
And it's been rewarded in accordance with Caitlin's recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
And the planning commission approved the recommendations back from council, and then with Caitlin's assistance, sent this back to council again.
So we got the 70 decibels.
I did notice there is, under the design standards, there's 2 number 5s, so obviously that second 5 will turn into a 6.
Right.
I'll just put it on the record. The only issue I have, and I had that conversation with Caitlin when we were discussing it the last time, is the way it's written for the 70 decibels. It says at breast height, that's a good dimension, right? It could vary, but everybody's head's at a different level. From the property line. Now, the only issue I have with that is that if you park your food truck in the middle of the parking lot, or if you park your food truck on the very corner of the parking lot, that's 2 different distances to measure 70 decibels from. Versus calling out at 15 feet or at 20 feet. Because then no matter where it is, right, you're a food truck, people are walking up to you. You will eventually be within the distance of a given measurement versus at the property line. I understand where the noise ordinance level comes from at the property line, because usually you're dealing with a fixed house or a fixed structure, or somebody's backyard having a party, nobody's there, the property line is a hard and fixed boundary. This doesn't have a hard and fixed boundary, that's why it's a food truck. So said my piece on, I would put it at a given distance, because a given distance in sound is a very specific thing. That's just my take on it.
Isn't that defined though by line item 3? By the structure setback requirements in the zoning district? So if it has to abide by that same requirement, you have those distances.
You have a minimum distance.
Yeah, and that would be the minimum to measure the decibel level at, in my opinion. Yes, to your point, it is subjective to where you are placed, but it is defined that if we're operating within the same setback requirements for the zoning district, then you have that minimum distance.
Each district has a different setback requirement. So if you're in a residential versus a commercial versus an industrial, different setback requirements.
So what would be the proposed language of sub 5?
I would say that my proposal would be, instead of, I would agree decibel at measured at breast height at a distance of 15 feet or 20 feet.
Rather than the property line.
It's very distinct. Back to you can get a decibel level app on your phone if the ordinance officer wants to walk out there. They don't have to know where the property line is. They don't have to figure out where the edge of anything is. They can walk 15 feet from the generator or whatever's making noise, turn on their app and say, yep, beeps, or nope, it doesn't. Have a nice day. I'll get out of your hair.
What's the minimum setback line? How many feet?
It's usually 20 feet in a given district. It might be 25 or 30 in some of the districts.
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah, it certainly is more specific. This is going to be implemented by village administration. I hope they do it reasonably and intelligently, but this would be more specific. I think I like 15 feet better, but
About
either
20
way, at least it's
I'm just
specific.
thinking that, you got to have somebody who, if somebody calls a complaint, somebody's got to go out and enforce that.
Where's the
And-
property
and then-
line? Is
yeah,
that what you're trying to
Then
think?
what's the next thing? Well, which property line? The north corner or the south corner?
20 feet is not that far.
No, it's not. Mr. Manager, what say you?
I'd say 20 feet for 70 decibels is reasonable. And I happen to see firsthand the utilization of the phone apps for a decibel level. I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to go on a field trip for a wind turbine and solar energy event in the central part of our state. And as we were actually on site for the wind turbine that had been turned off so that we could actually go inside to see what the inside of the base of the wind turbine looks like. And then we had to walk 100 feet away for safety purposes as DTE was facilitating the tour. Then they turned the wind turbine on. And this is on a very large wind farm where there's specific site requirements for decibel level. And for the wind turbines, if the wind's blowing the right way kind of thing, at 100 feet you can hear the decibel level. But at the property line, which with these wind farms up in central Michigan, they're 1,400, 1,500 feet away from the property line. And and those wind turbines cannot exceed 55 decibels. And they have experts that come in. They have a third party that comes in under contract with DTE to actually measure the decibel level at different locations on the parcel. And maybe they take the average of the thing or whatever the case is, just to make sure that they're in compliance so that they can have the data in case a neighbor complains about the decibel level. So anyway, but it was kind of funny because there was a lot of college kids that were able to join in, and everybody gets their phone out and they got the DB app, and the wind turbine was below 55 even at 100 feet away. So I don't think that it would be an issue as far as having the right tool to be able to measure it. And I think your comments well taken, Mr. Feldman, that 70 decibel at 20 feet and not having to worry about the property line because of where the food truck vendor set up for the day, reason absolves that potential problem.
I missed the last meeting. Where does the 70 decibel limit come in?
That was something that was bantered around with some research, and that was something that some of the other communities, i.e. City of Howell, utilized, and Caitlin came back with that's a common decibel level. And in our discussion at our last meeting, it was suggested that instead of having a range, that we just say not to exceed, so that we didn't get into the issue of, is it 62 or 72 or whatever the
Subjectivity.
case may be.
Yeah.
And the other thing that council was concerned about from our last get-together was having these changes in place and revisiting the first reading so that those changes were in place instead of trying to do an amendment on the fly and having to republish again, et cetera, et cetera. So
This was the document from the CDC with recommended decibel levels, and 70 is like a wash machine, dishwasher. You may feel annoyed, but it's a tolerable noise. So that was where the recommendation 70 came from. So.
Also feel annoyed because you haven't had your food yet, so.
That's true. But I guess not to belabor this topic as well, I think 20 feet is good, but should we also have a direction from the 20 feet? Should be from the serving window. There could come into arguments that if I stand in front of the truck, it's going to get different 20 feet away. If I stand behind the truck where the generator is, should it be omnidirectional and average? Or
20.
From the generator, yeah,
From the, okay.
from the noise source.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it's going to be a major problem, but I think we put the 20 feet instead of the wording property line, so.
So did we publish on this? Ernie?
I will publish after
Okay.
their
So-
consensus.
Right. Right. So if we modify as suggested, and I'm not hearing any resistance to making this change, do we need to modify in accordance with the discussion this evening and postpone first reading? We can,
No, you can have consensus with the discussed changes.
okay.
And I just want to confirm, so we're replacing in sub 5 at the property line to at a distance of 20 feet.
Consensus. All right.
The first number 5, not the second.
The first 5, yes, the first 5,
Change the second 5 to 6.
yes.
I have one more question about A, the question of and or. Food truck when operated as an accessory to festival or village-sponsored event and when located in R1 zoning district. So you don't have to meet both of those criteria, right? It's this or this?
But, yeah, I think if you read the rest of that sentence, it's relating to if a neighborhood association, so let's say an HOA in residential, is having a party and wants a food truck.
Yeah,
It's
so,
exempt.
so the festival or village is one,
One thing.
and the R1 is another. They don't have to be both going on at the same time.
Wouldn't and/or be preferable?
I feel like and or would be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Too.
That way you don't have to have something in the village at the same time as in the subdivision.
Sure. Yeah.
It would make it more clear, and the more and more legal documents I see, you just see more and more the and or language. I think that would be an improvement also. Okay. Anybody else on food truck? So, okay, we have a consensus. All right. Now is the time for public comment on any item not on our regular agenda this evening. Is there any public comment? Being none, we are going to be going to closed session, looks like. So before we do so, why don't we do our council manager comment time now, before we go into closed session. Manager Trent, anything?
I've got a written report I'd like to distribute. I apologize, I wasn't able to get it to you beforehand, but I'll pass that out to you on some of the items that I've got, or I can briefly run through them depending on time, whatever your pleasure is, Mr. President. As far as economic development, Brunch at Joe's did open last week. They've been very busy. Seem to be off to a good start. And Senior Victor's is scheduled to open in December. We already talked about the Gas Becker parking lot issue with the communications that have been sent from Mr. Gildner and myself. Yesterday, we had a representative from DTE that met with us at the DPW site to discuss the telephone pole relocation that we need to maximize our footprint for the proposed DPW building. So we're getting assistance from that individual to interface with the planner from DTE, and they'll get back with us on what's necessary to make that happen, and hopefully come back and say that they'll do that pro bono, like they did across the street for the Creekside Hearth telephone pole relocation. And we also had Kevin Cook, our engineer from Wade Trim, present, and he is going to be interfacing with us to help develop the RFP that we'll have ready to go out for advertisement in January. And right now, our leaning is that we would hire a contract manager to oversee this project, and that the manager would be responsible for acquiring the bids from the various trades to do the construction of the project. So again, our timeline, projected timeline, is that we would start this project in the spring and finish it up sometime in the fall for the new fiscal year. And that the cost of that project would be split over the 2 fiscal years upcoming. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of calls from some neighbors that have been complaining about sump pump water discharge onto a neighbor's property. And so one of those issues, because Kevin Cook happened to be in town, Brian and I went out to take with 3 sets of eyes to evaluate this issue. We're going to be sending a communique to the one property owner, the one neighbor that's complaining about the water issue, believes that something has changed with his neighbor. We see that there's an outlet pump, but because of how the properties are sloped, there's a natural ravine, if you will, that comes into play. The properties are soggy in a certain area as you venture down toward the backyard and the slope that exists. And because of, I think, all the rainfall that we've had the last several weeks, that the area is just mushy and spongy. And it's bad enough where both neighbors are having issues trying to mow the grass around a privacy fence that's been installed to separate the neighbors. So, but we're going to recommend that the one neighbor with the sump pump redirect his line and extend it further back into the backyard to try to help absolve the issue of the complaint. The other complaint can be easily fixed. The owner did take a recommendation that I had made about extending her line away from the neighbor, but it's still in a position where the neighbor's claiming that even with the rainfall from last week, that the water discharge is ending up on their driveway. And so it just requires a slight modification of the pipe to accommodate that issue. So we'll be trying to resolve that problem. But those are some of the kinds of things that pop up periodically with sump pump issues. The Planning Commission met last week and approved on several contingent items for the second site plan from Midwest Construction, Greg Dennis's development on Lot 12 in the industrial district. And to their credit, the very next day we had several items that were submitted to us for review to comply with those contingency concerns. And they also provided an email to their engineering firm on all the other items that they need drawings to be updated to reflect Planning Commission concerns from the site plan, as well as what the planning consultants and engineers identified. So that project should be fully completed, I would think, here within the next couple of weeks. So, and Caitlin Haben will be giving us a report when everything's finalized and that it's okay to proceed with building permits, et cetera. The last item I have for an update is that last week we had the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with an infrastructure specialist out of the EPA in Chicago, Region 5, which administers the $4 million grant that we received for the community funded initiative for our East and West St. Clair Road project. And it was a very helpful meeting because we learned what some of the requirements are as far as reports that they need to have submitted into the portal. This infrastructure specialist said, actually, I want you to send them to me first. I'll review them and see if there's any changes before we put them in the portal, because it's difficult to change them after the fact. So that was helpful from that standpoint. Because of all the new federal funding, this EPA office in Chicago was essentially just manned by one person up until just a few months ago. And the organization has expanded to 11 people now that are helping administer all these billions of dollars of grants that have come from Washington. So it was a good meeting. We had a couple of engineers from Fleece and Vandenbrink that were part of the discussion as well too, and they're going to help me in developing the reports that need to be sent to get the ball rolling. And again, this is a project that we're pushing back to 2025 now. But the gentleman also did confirm, because one of his questions that he posed, and I think part of it was just because he's new to the organization himself, we've got a water line project and a sewer line project that's part of this project. And he was concerned about whether the sewer line project was eligible to be funded with this grant money because it's coming from the water fund under EPA. And he got back to us in less than 24 hours and said that project can be funded under the Clean Water. So everything that we're working on is eligible for funding under the grant. So just wanted to give you that quick update. That's all I have. Thank you.
You. Kim, anything to bring to council?
Sir.
Pete?
Nope, I was just gonna ask about the gas packer stuff. It's already covered.
Have we contacted the Attorney General for federal prosecution to the interference?
Don't know what the post office has done.
Right. Yeah.
I know of a few people who complained though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did talk to the postmaster who covers Romeo and Almont. He's gotten, several phone calls from folks who are concerned about what's going on there. He's run the issue up the flagpole, if you will, and has not gotten any favorable response back from the higher ups. It's like, we never deal with this kind of issue. We don't know what to do. That's kind of what he's being told. But he said he would continue to make inquiries. But at this point, based on Mr. Gildner's review of our ordinances, we feel that Mr. Becker is in violation of our ordinance, and he's been sent documentation from our zoning ordinance, as well as commentary from Mr. Gildner and myself on what he needs to do to come into compliance. And basically, he's been told he's been asked to remove the barriers or the barrels to provide an access lane for fire trucks and safety issues, as well as he needs to submit a revised site plan and come to the planning commission because he's changed the parking lot configuration of his property. So.
Great. Okay. Tim? Mindy?
Yeah, just a few updates from the park board meeting on October 26th. So I don't know if any of you have been to the park recently, but there's an expansion onto the pavilion, which should support the Music at the Park events and other activities at the park. The old stage should be dismantled and taken down probably within the next year because it won't be needed anymore. The bathroom renovations, I think, are almost done. Looks much nicer in there. I don't know if I hadn't seen the men's room before, but I can tell you that the women's room was, I don't know, it was a little shabby. So it's got a little bit of a facelift and looking much nicer. There's some minor kind of upgrades to the kitchen being discussed, mostly like paint, facelift type things, nothing major. The board will still be discussing that into the next meeting or two. There were some budget amendments that the treasurer had proposed. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be at the meeting, so we put those off, and part of that was the question about the funding from DNR for the land acquisition and what kind of happens with those funds. So I expect we'll be talking about that just to make sure we get everything tied up with the budget amendments. What else? The issue of fireworks in the park did come up with the park board. They expressed some concern. They had heard that the police were called and just had some concerns with that. And so I had said that I think we probably learned some lessons with the first event permitted by the village. And one of those is to carbon copy the police department so that they're aware of an event. So if people call, they can say, yes, they have the appropriate permits to do that. It is fireworks. It's not some type of other event going on. And so they seem satisfied with that modification. And then also if it was an event in the park, to also copy the park board, just so everyone is aware that this is happening. So I said that I would bring that back to village council and management. I think those were some reasonable adjustments that could be made. That's pretty much it for park board. I wanted to, on the record, thank Brian and Clinton for giving our Girl Scout troop a tour of the water tower and the wastewater treatment plant. So they got to go around and take a look at some of our village utilities, which I think it's really important that we understand where our water comes from and where our wastewater goes. So yeah, it was really nice of them to take time out of their day to show the Girl Scouts around. Appreciate that. And that's all I have.
So I'll second your comment about the wastewater treatment tour. It was very enlightening. I now think differently when I'm, using the facilities at home. So yeah, I learned a lot. It was actually rather fascinating. The only thing I wanted to just bring up was the actual park bathrooms. And I'm glad to hear they were renovated, but it's just a little concerning to me that they're always locked at all times. I know my wife and we ventured down to the park a couple times and she needed to use the facilities and lo and behold, you can't use them. I'm like, that to me is a huge deterrent of having a park if facilities like that aren't, regularly accessible. So, but I also understand in this day and age, we have to protect the investments and people are people, but it's something we definitely need to, there's other security measures we can put in place or something like that. But I think that's going to be a huge deterrent of anybody ever want to use that park if they know they have little children there or something and the facilities aren't going to be open during normal time. So
yeah, the porta potties there, of course, but that's not really an attractive option for a lot of people. I can take that feedback back to the board and see if there would be a consideration, maybe during like the really busy season of the park, like summertime. I know they will open it up for events, but it's usually closed and locked.
Perhaps with the wastewater treatment plant being so close, maybe some security cameras or something pointing towards that facility, if we don't have them already, may help and be beneficial. So I just think it would be a huge plus if stuff like that is open and accessible. So
Number of cameras in the park. And I presume that those restrooms are being locked because concerns of vandals.
Yeah.
Teens. So let's see, what kind of story do they?
Right, which shouldn't be a concern if it's daytime hours that people are around. So I can bring it back to them. And
just an observation, because we actually were talking about that, and they told us a harrowing tale of an incident that happened that they witnessed. But yes, that was just some personal feedback. But back to the point of the tour, it was very, very enlightening. It was kind of neat to see everything and definitely understand more about the valving and the equipment that they're dealing with. So definitely worth the time of the day.
Steve?
Yeah, I'd second that. Good use of time to go on the tour. So me and Ed went with Clinton the other day. That's all I had.
So, yeah, I think we're finished with our regular agenda for this evening. And so next, Tim, is there anything you wanted to read into the record?
I'll make the motion that we enter into closed session in accordance with sections 8A and 8E of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, being Public Act 267 of 1976, to, one, conduct an evaluation of Manager Trent's performance and to discuss settlement strategy in connection with Civil Action 21-12, 12045, Laura Black versus Village of Valmont.
Second.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Ed, to to move into closed section in accordance with this is the Open Meetings Act sections that were cited on the record. Roll call. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Steffler?
Aye.
Dyke?
Aye.
Feldman?
Aye.
Kuligowski?
Aye.
Powell?
Aye.
Schneider?
Aye. So unanimously approved by all those council members in attendance. And as we're about to go into, we're going to, I think, structure that meeting. There are two different issues, as is indicated by President Pro Tem Dyke's motion. And we have one of our village attorneys here, so I think we ought to do this in a manner in which she is patiently while waiting for us to finish up with all our doodads here. So move it around so that I'll be discussing issues that would concern her and do evaluation thereafter. That makes sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Quickly. Thank you for coming, Wes, gentlemen.
Thank you. Nice evening.